If you're an active job seeker and you're tempted to use some underhanded techniques to get an advantage in the interview, you need to listen up because employers are starting to get wise and they're cracking down. And in this video, I'm going to break down what some of those techniques are and what companies are doing about it. Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Brian. I'm a corporate recruiter, a career strategist, and the founder of A Life After Layoff. And I've made it my mission to peel back the curtain and demystify how corporate hiring and careers work. So if this kind of content interests you, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you're tired of employers holding all the cards in the employment arrangement, from job search all the way through retirement, you want to make sure that you implement strategy and reclaim control in your career. And if you're not sure how to do that, I've created a free 1.5-hour webinar which walks you through exactly what you need to do to start acting like the CEO of your career. So if you're actively looking for a job or you want to get ahead in your career, you want to check that out, and I will leave a link in the video description below. So over the last few years of the job market going back and forth and it being so difficult to find a job, it's of no surprise that job seekers are getting desperate. But unfortunately, there are cases where they are starting to rely on what I call black hat techniques in order to get through the interview process to land a job. And if you follow this channel for any period of time, you know that I cover employment trends and what's going on in the market. And obviously, employers have been leveraging automation and AI tools for a long period of time now, and it's only getting more pervasive. And there might be what would be considered to be a double standard. People say, well, hey, these employers can use these tools, but why can't I use it for my job search? And I think that there's a very distinct difference between white hat and black hat techniques on both sides of the fence. So let's kind of break them down from the employer side real quick, and then we'll jump over to the employee side. From the employer side, obviously they're using AI tools to help with their automation on their applicant tracking system. So when you apply to jobs, these AI tools are increasingly starting to screen candidates, rank them, and then in some cases, they may even make a hiring decision, like a reject. These same tools also parse your resume and build candidate profiles on the back ends of these systems. And so that's when we talk about ATS compliance. That's really what we're talking about. But they also are starting to use these same tools for recruiter sourcing. They're basically trying to essentially replace the recruiter in a lot of ways, but they're doing outbound sourcing. They're going out and looking at candidates through some automated techniques. So you might get robo inquiries on your profile on a place like a LinkedIn or something like that. Third, they're starting to leverage it more in the interviewing process itself, and they do it through the form of one-way interviews and then AI avatar interviews. So basically, you're interviewing by yourself to a screen with no other human on the end, and what you say into the system gets ranked and tallied, and they make a determination whether or not they're going to move forward with you. And they can interview a lot more people without actually having to sit down and do the work. Now, is that considered to be black hat or white hat? I would say that that's probably white hat, but it doesn't really make for good candidate experience. When I think white hat, I'm thinking of optimization of processes, moving things more smoothly and effectively, streamlining things, trying to get through all candidates. So if you look at AI looking at your resume and making a determination, in theory, it's white hat because it's looking through all of your information and it's basing it on what information you have there versus what their job posting is, and there's a determination to, are you a good fit or are you not? It's not creating any fake scenarios in that case, but you can argue that I'm getting bounced out of these interview processes because the AI is automatically kicking me out. So it's like this kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario with the companies using these tools. People can get seen more readily. There's 1,000 applications. AI can parse through them in the matter of seconds versus a human, which may not get through all of those resumes. They may only get through the first 50, 100 of them before they find their slate of candidates. So in theory, it should be good, but on the same token, people complain about AI bouncing them out and all this stuff. So I wouldn't call that necessarily a black hat technique that companies use to do that. Rather, I would say it's white hat. It's just not a good candidate experience. Same thing goes for the one-way interviews. I'm not a fan of these one-way interviews. I've never worked at a company that ever did them, but I'm seeing them increasingly being offered in job search processes, especially when they're trying to do preliminary screens. But certainly they've been leveraging virtual interviewing platforms for a long period of time, the Zooms, etc. But taking it to the next level, they don't have to sit down physically and talk to the person. They can just put them in front of a screen, you hit the record button, and if you mess up, they can see all the mess ups.
Potential issues and be proactive with resolving customer concerns, but we are mainly intentionalizing to realize what a customer's shoot. Anyways, our goal is to anticipate their issues and
there's either a human on the back end reviewing them, or increasingly they're doing even these AI avatar interviews, and it's a very impersonal situation. You're talking to an AI avatar who is like trying to pretend that it's an actual recruiter, and it's just kind of like a whole weird thing.
I'm your AI interviewer. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, let's jump into it. I have some context on your background based on your LinkedIn. Can you tell me a bit about your experience at WDB at Berkeley?
Yeah, at WDB at Berkeley, I developed 2 full-stack web applications with my peers at Berkeley.
But would I call that, again, black hat or white hat? And I would say that it's still white hat. They're just making things more efficiently. Who's most affected is the recruiter, who is being replaced by these tools. And the candidate who doesn't get any benefit of doubt. The AI will determine whether you're a yes or a no based on the words that come out of your mouth. And so there is a bit of like a sterileness to that, whereas a recruiter uses more interpretation, can read into or extrapolate things. So if it was me, I would want to interview with the recruiter versus a virtual assistant or a virtual recruiter. Where I think employers go black hat, though, is when they are leveraging things like fake job postings or scraping of data and doing all that kind of stuff. That's where I think it becomes black hat, where they're not having an intention to actually, they're being deceiving with their intentions to fill jobs, etc. And even though that's not necessarily automation, that's a black hat technique that companies will sometimes use. They'll create these fake job postings, or they'll do the bait and switch, and I've talked about those in other videos, because it is misrepresenting what the job is, what they're paying, all of that kind of stuff.
Develop this tool that would invisibly let you use AI to cheat on these interviews. So I built the tool, I publicly recorded myself using it on the Amazon interview. I got the job, and I posted this everywhere saying, look how easy it is to hack these interviews.
And with virtual interviewing becoming much more common, it's no surprise that job seekers are starting to use tools to help them gain an advantage, especially in a job market that's very difficult. So let's jump over to what the job seekers have been doing that might be considered black hat and ruffling some feathers. The first black hat technique is interview assistance, and this traditionally has come in the form of a job seeker writing out all their interview notes and then referencing them throughout the interview process. Some cases, they may have a Word doc set up on the side of their screen, and they're basically scrolling through and trying to find the right answer and then reading off of it. But with the rise of AI, it's become increasingly sophisticated, where these companies are now offering these black hat solutions to job seekers, where essentially they're putting an AI agent on your desktop, and it's listening to the interviewer and in real time generating an answer for you that you read off of a script.
Cool. So my question is, what is your biggest weakness?
Yeah, great question. I would say that my biggest weakness is I can be overly critical of my own work, always aiming for high standards, and this sometimes slows my pace, but I'm actively working on balancing quality with efficiency.
That's awesome. Welcome to the marketing team at OpenAI.
So basically it's delivering fake answers in real time. Problem is obvious. You're falsifying your experience, your knowledge base, and your ability to recall the details of complicated technical questions. But additionally, you're also reading in a very robotic manner. You're not actually even listening to the question. You're just waiting for this AI agent to pull up what you're supposed to say. And that can become a very obvious thing when you're reading off notes like that. And the other issue of relying heavily on notes is that you're likely trying to scan through 3 and 4 pages of information to try to find the right one. And you're spending all of your available time scrolling for the right answer. And if you can't find it quickly enough, you're going to start fumbling over your words. You're going to start becoming a deer in headlights, and they're going to start second guessing your true knowledge. And suddenly that recruiter or that hiring manager who is interviewing you is going to start looking at you with doubt. The dynamic is going to shift, and they may even notice you moving your head back and forth, looking at some notes. And again, it's just not a good look. The better solution here is just to be prepared and go into job interviews with a high likelihood of having success and actually knowing your stuff. And I personally don't think there's anything wrong with having your resume in front of you with a few handwritten notes on it, but you certainly don't want to rely on overly scripted or overly rehearsed interview answers, because it's going to come across as robotic, it's going to come across as inauthentic, and interviewers are going to pick up on that. The second major issue that employers are really cracking down on is cheating on your technical assessments. So this comes in the form often like with a software developer where they may take the question at hand, the problem that they're trying to solve, and then plug it into ChatGPT and have it create the code for them. And then they basically just cut and paste it into the screen so that the interviewer can read the code that way.
Write a program to answer questions like how many meters in an inch based on a given set of unit conversion rules. I'm going to paste some examples and test queries in the coder pad. Please write accurate and valid code during the interview.
Got it. I'm going to write it in Python.
Obviously, that's cheating and that's falsifying your abilities to an employer. And that's certainly the fastest way to get blacklisted from that company and likely get a reputation in the industry. And it's also very tempting to have a browser up with ChatGPT or Google on it and Googling your answers for definitions or maybe some different concepts that you're not intimately familiar with. The problem is that employers do notice that kind of thing. It's very obvious from the hiring manager perspective. And I've actually had personal experiences where hiring managers have given me feedback on a candidate they interviewed saying, this candidate seemed to be Googling answers and they did not seem like they had the deep knowledge base. And so they basically were blacklisted. I've even heard of stories of people having somebody interviewing on their behalf or somebody sitting off camera right next to them, typing in the answers in real time and then putting them on the screen for them to read off or doing their coding assessment off screen. So obviously that's causing major problems for employers who are seeing an increase in job seekers leveraging black hat techniques to cheat their way through the system. So what are employers doing to combat this? Well, they're getting increasingly sophisticated with their detection systems. Oftentimes, you'll be using a proprietary interview browser when you log into these systems. And these browsers very frequently now have keystroke loggers. They have activity trackers. So anywhere you click on the screen, they can tell and it tracks it on the back end. So if you're going from tab to tab, you're clicking on certain areas of the screen that don't make sense, or you're typing in something that doesn't make sense, say the question that they're asking you, and you're cutting and pasting, they're going to know that on the back end, and employers are starting to get really sophisticated with that. The second thing that they're doing, and this is kind of the more traditional way, they're forcing people back into the office. They're forcing people back into the office for not only work, but also for interviewing. And companies like Google are now requiring people to come in for every level of interviewing screen, including the technical screens. So unfortunately, for a lot of people, you're going to be finding yourself having to show up face to face to go through every round of screening, kind of like it was in the old days. And so obviously it's going to be a lot harder to cheat your way through the system when you're sitting in front of the interviewer, or you've got two other senior engineers in the room with you when you're doing your technical assessment. The moral of the story here is to just be prepared and learn how to present yourself in the most effective manner. Anytime I see somebody that is leveraging some sort of black hat technique, I just cringe because all you're doing is you're hurting yourself. Say you cheat your way through the system successfully and you end up at a company that you're in way over your head. What you're going to end up doing is, yeah, you may have gotten that job for that moment, but you're going to get exposed very quickly, and you're probably going to get turned over or terminated very quickly when they realize that you actually don't have the skills that you said you did. And if they found that you falsified your documents, you're going to be blacklisted from that company. And again, especially in certain industries, a lot of these hiring managers know one another, and there's a lot of backdoor references that happen. So if you're a job seeker, just be prepared. Learn how to present yourself in an effective manner, and don't rely on these black hat techniques in order to get a job. Because if you have to rely on black hat techniques to get the job, it's likely that you're not a good fit for the job to begin with. And all that's going to do is, like, just suppose that you actually trick them into giving you a job offer for a job that you're not at all qualified for. All you're going to do is you're going to work at that company for a few months. They're going to realize that you faked your way through it, and then you're going to end up getting terminated. And now your resume is going to look weaker because now you have an additional job and you're job hopping or a job gap. And you're likely to get blacklisted from those industries. Because listen, in a lot of industries, hiring managers know one another. They come from the same companies. And so backdoor references are certainly a thing, and that will come back and bite you in the long run. So it's just better to learn how to interview properly, how to present yourself properly, and get the skills that you need to work on. If you're not good at coding and you're going into a coding exercise, and at Amazon, we used to tell senior engineers, people who had been coding for 20, 25 years, to take your time and practice and brush up on the basics, because that's what they were going to be assessing in these interviews. We would suggest that they would go off and spend time on LeetCode and other places to really practice and make sure that you're getting all of your stuff together. There would always be that one guy that would refuse to do it. Just pride or ego would get in the way, would refuse to do it, and then would go into the coding exercise, completely bomb it, and then say, I didn't want the job anyway, and all this stuff. So moral of the story here is do it the right way. If you don't know how to interview or you get nervous, there are techniques that you can use. There's certain ways that you can present and recall your interview answers in a more methodical and concise and easy way, and deliver interview answers that are actually going to give you the highest likelihood of getting them to say yes to you and get you the offer. And yeah, I teach that stuff in my Ultimate Job Seeker Bootcamp and 48-hour interview crash courses, but there's lots of ways to prepare. Just the main thing is prepare. No, don't rehearse, but practice your answers. Get very comfortable with your stories and just make sure that you're overly prepared. You don't want the reason why you don't get the job not to be because you're not capable, but because you can't deliver an answer in an effective way, because that stuff is solvable. Anyway, I just wanted to share this with you. I'm going to make another video on some techniques that you can use to interview more effectively very soon, to kind of follow up on all of this with a little bit more detail on that side. I appreciate you watching. Hope you found this video to be helpful, and we will see you on the next one.